can you talk about the Arif situation? Because they weren't in the book, but I believe you did try and get in contact with them.
They never went in the book. Basically, tried to get them, and then I get a phone call one night, quite middle of the night or something, and I had this nutcase just shouting down the phone. You know, sounded like Fagin out of Oliver Twist. That's what it sounded like. You know, it was like, Bria Anderson, yeah, you fucking want to do this, you fucking want to do that. Yeah. Where did you get my number? And I was like, what? Who is this? You know, and I'm like, I didn't know, but it's one of the Arifs. I think it was Mehmet Arif, could have been.
Yeah.
Or Dennis, one or two of them, and really fucking unhappy. But what had happened was Bernie had sent him a letter and put my number in the letter. So I'm getting the phone call, and honestly, he must have been fucking. He was raging. He's like, "Where'd you get my fucking number? Yeah, you want to do that?" And I didn't know what to say. I'm like, my mate got it off the internet, 192. You know, and he was like, "What? Well, fucking?" And then he says, "You better get security. You're in security." And I'm thinking, I better get security, but for asking you to get a fucking photograph, I don't think so. And then he went, I says, "Look, see, at the end of the day, we've wrote you a letter. We fucking, phoned you up. We've wrote you a letter. We've been polite about it. If it had turned up at your door, you'd have probably took the fucking hump. If we don't ask you, you take a hump. Because it's about notorious faces. You're obviously mentioned in the history of crime. You know, it was just a nice, polite thing to do, was ask, instead of just turning up and photographing you, which I could have done." And he went, all right, fair enough. And then I said, "Do you want to get in the book?" He went, "No." And then he put the phone down on me.
Maybe they knew you were mates with Paul Ferris, and in Paul's book there was that fight at that pub between not the ARifs, but it was, I think, people who used their pub.
Well, this is one of the reasons why I got a lot of access, because Paul said, and I didn't know at the time, but Paul says everywhere I went in London and different places, Manchester, he would always get the call.
Get a phone call, yeah.
And he said it was like a fucking, wherever you went, Brian, it was like a running commentary.
Yeah.
So, and I didn't know that.
And
so
they were
must have
checking.
been phoning, who's this fucking idiot,
Yeah, they were checking with them that you were okay.
Yeah. I met him in Essex, in a gym in Essex. And I remember him telling me that, I think he was showing me, he was telling me about, this is what I remember about Vic. I remember him saying he had different hatchets for a different size of skulls. And I'm thinking, that's pretty fucking scientific, isn't it? But a real gentleman. I found him to be a real gentleman. Now, he's always took my calls, and one of the times would have been Roy Shaw's funeral.
Yeah.
So I'm standing in the street, drives all the way down, stands in the street with my camera to take pictures. Various people turning up, and then I noticed this photographer. It was a guy videoing at the side of me, and then these guys walk up and start giving him a kicking.
Yeah.
And it's obviously people connected to Roy Shaw. So they started booting into the photographer and chasing the photographer, and I'm thinking, fucking, I'm next, aren't I?
Yeah.
So anybody starts fucking throwing punches on me, I'm just going to start throwing punches. I don't care if I'm at a funeral. I'm fucking going to defend myself. This guy just ran away. I was ready for it.
Yeah.
And next thing, 3-4 Jeeps have pulled up, big black Jeeps. And one of them was Vic. And he went, "All right, Brian. All right, mate." Yeah, jump in the car. So I've jumped in the car with Vic. And then we've went to the actual, covered the whole funeral, the wake and things like that.
Whose funeral was this?
It was Roy Shaw, but I remember the reason why the photographer I was fine. But the reason why the photographer got a kicking was because he was hired by Dave Courtney to go out and to video everybody, and obviously there must have been a lot of friction going on, and they just took it out in this video guy.
Was Dave Courtney not at the funeral?
Dave Courtney was at the funeral as well, and basically my memory is we're sitting at this table, and Dave Courtney was at another pub. He wouldn't come in because he'd heard that Vic was in the same pub as everybody else.
All right.
So
okay.
Dave refused to come in, and so I remember Vic basically sitting there courting everybody, and it was all the East Enders were there as well, and South London guys were there, and basically Vic was saying, because Vic didn't like Dave Courtney, and there must have been bad blood there, and he was like, I don't know how you guys for South London have it with Dave, and all that was going on behind the scenes. So I was like, but anyway, that day potentially saved me from a kicking,
Who were the cameramen working for? Dave Courtney?
Dave Courtney. David hired the camera guy, was working for Dave. So there was, as I say, there was bad blood there. Yeah. But lucky enough, I was fine, and it was quite a big funeral as well. Because I photographed Roy Shaw 3 or 4 times before it.
I mean, that's a huge funeral. Like, what other faces did you see at the funeral?
Oh, everybody was there. I mean, Joey Pyle, Fred was there, Joey Piles were there, the Sabinis were there.